CITES is the convention of... CITES is the convention on...
CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, is a convention that manages the trade of wildlife that is threatened with extinction, in large part because of trade.
CITES, or the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, is a treaty under the United Nations auspices with 183 countries belonging to it. It's the major global instrument that regulates trade in wild species of animals and plants around the world to make sure they do not become endangered or extinct.
So at this CITES meeting, there's a number of very important issues on the table. I think one of the fundamental issues, I've been to CITES since 1989, most of the meetings, and the ivory issue is also always a huge issue, and there's been this ping-pong game between the southern African countries that want to trade ivory, most of the rest of Africa and a lot of other places who argue that any legal trade in ivory enables a massive illegal trade.
Everybody's talking about ivory sales here again. South Africa's got 65 tons. Zimbabwe's got about 90 tons.
It's always obviously good to see bodies like Wild Aid and other like-minded individuals, and a stronger push for demand reduction, which actually formally, for the first time, I believe, is on the agenda where it hasn't been before.
It's a proposal on the table, which I think is one of the most important ones here at CITES, which is that countries not just stop the international trade, but have a ban on domestic sales of ivory. And that, to me, has always been a piece of CITES that's been missing. You ban the international trade, but then stockpiles can be sold forever.
The challenge is that it is, in many instances, about trading species at times more than the conservation of species.
For one, CITES is above my pay grade. It is very good to come here as a conference. It's a good opportunity for someone like me who works down in the weeds to network and see how things are happening at a much higher level and how they affect us on the ground.
Making some assumptions about the nature of the good you are selling in the market that I think are not correct. For one thing, in Asia, there is a particular attachment to a truly wild specimen of something that makes it a different kind of good.
But I don't know what message we will give to our Vietnamese people. Are we encouraging them to use Rhino horn? We are not encouraging them to use Rhino horn.
There's a lot of politics involved, much to my frustration. Being a man from the bush, I'm not used to all this politics about decision making, but it's horse trading. The EU is a big voting bloc, and you've got all these other nations all vying for their own positions.
But the reality is, unless someone is on the ground stopping the hemorrhaging, by the time all these policies are put in place, by the time we work on demand reduction in Asia, by the time we work on getting communities to a point where they're not going to poach, there's going to be nothing left. So that's why, whilst I get up and go to work every day knowing what I do is not the answer, I realise that it's a major part of the jigsaw puzzle, and that's stopping the hemorrhaging. So our job is to buy time.
It is not a solution, it is not an answer, but it will buy us time, and it will buy the pangolin recognition. And with recognition, hopefully NGOs that have focused on charismatic animals like elephant and rhino will turn their focus to animals like pangolin. Being small doesn't mean that you must be forgotten.
At CITES, there are people that are pro-trade and against trade, and I think the emotion needs to be taken out of that, and they need to concentrate on the facts of numbers declining in the wild.
So CITES can't do everything, and it can be incredibly frustrating and incredibly slow and incredibly cumbersome. But it is important. We do have to engage with it. We do have to work with it. We do have to recognise that it's one of a whole suite of steps that we have to take in order to protect our rapidly diminishing wildlife.